Hello, and welcome to my review of the Obskur motion capture and VTuber software. This is a product that has been created by Obskur, which is a Movella company. This is the same parent company that owns Xens. When it comes to mocap, Xens makes the good stuff. A couple of disclaimers up front. I have friends that work at this company. They are totally wonderful and super talented, and I want them to succeed. That's a bias. That's actually a bias. I am very supportive of the people in this line of work who do this stuff. I interviewed at Obskur a year ago for a job that I did not get. I don't know if that's important. In the interest of transparency, I thought I'd just tell you. Everything I'm sharing is public information, but there are some things they've asked me not to talk about. So some of my opinions are formed on things that I can't share in this review. You should also know that everything is rapidly changing. If you are watching this video 6 months from now, things might be completely different. I was given their mocap suit to test, and while this isn't a paid review, the suit is still pretty expensive. We're gonna talk about that a little bit, and represents a pretty significant value. So my opinions are still my own here. Only other bias I have is that I have a YouTube channel, this YouTube channel dedicated to showing people how to do VTuber software and how to build VTuber software in Unreal Engine. That's one of the things I do over here. So I have a pretty strong bent towards DIY stuff, but we'll get into this. All right, so this video is complicated. I'm just gonna kick this off. The suit is good. The mocap is great. It looks awesome. However, that's not really the whole picture when we're evaluating a mocap system. They wanted me to specifically talk about the motion capture and the quality of it, but it's really hard to talk about the suit without talking about the software it's attached to, so we inevitably are gonna talk about that as well. Some of it's because I'm excited about it, but some of it because it directly affects the suit and your decision to purchase one of these suits. So let's just actually talk about the software, the thing they didn't come to me for. Earlier last year, I predicted a rise in more commercialized and commodified VTuber software. I made a whole video talking about how I could see that was happening. This was before I knew about Obskur, and how I thought it was a good thing. I actually took the video down before I interviewed Obskur because I thought it was way too meta and could be weird, so I took it down. Obskur aims to make streaming software that can replace your existing streaming software if you're a VTuber. This is very cool and allows for a lot of interesting opportunities by letting streamers build their own virtual environments in their own worlds. It works for people with webcams who are using green screens. It also works for people with avatars who want to do real-time virtual motion capture, hand movement. This virtual worlds feature is not unique to Obskur. You can do this stuff in Unity or Unreal Engine, or you can do this in an app that's based on one of those engines like Warudo, Motion, Venian, and a few others that are up and coming. I'm a pretty dedicated DIYer, so I don't have a ton of experience with these. I find all of these solutions to be a little frustrating as they're all built on game engines, and from my point of view, they're kind of watered down versions of those game engines. Some of them even have programming solutions built in via nodes. If you're really interested in high-tech, high-fidelity VTubing, and you're on the cutting edge, you're probably already using a game engine directly, like Unreal or Unity. And I think a good portion of the marketing here is Obskur works in Unreal 5. You know, that really fancy game engine that everyone, especially me, is always talking about. And honestly, I don't feel like Obskur is really dumbing down the game engine. They're legitimately building a broadcasting software on top of it. This is actually a transformative use of the engine, and I admire the ambition for what the software is hoping to achieve for users, because this is really trying to replace OBS. This is trying to be an entirely new streaming software. Most streamers are using OBS or Streamlabs OBS, and if you're gonna get into this and you're gonna build a competitor to those and make a VTuber software, that's pretty ambitious. The only downside here is that you can't port your OBS settings and assets. You kind of have to start over. The idea here is streaming through Obskur. There's no way to get your Obskur data out of Obskur. There's no plugin for streaming data to game engines. There's no recording feature to be able to record body motion as FBX or BVH. There's nothing. Once you're in the system, you're locked in. I can't say that about any other motion capture solution out there right now. I spent a while trying to think about this. Transferring mocap data either comes standard or is a paid feature in other motion capture software. By the way, it's extremely uncool that a lot of these mocap companies put the feature of streaming data into a paid subscription tier. The kind of people who want that feature are not the kind of people who want to be paying $10 or $50 or even more a month to do that kind of thing. Just to put a T on it, Rococo will let you live stream motion capture data out of their recording studio to other engines. Last I used it, it was paywalled, but at least it was possible. Mocap runs through your phone, and you can connect those things to almost any system, and it's free. You don't have to pay Sony to be able to do it. Mocap I didn't really want to mention because they've sponsored a lot of content on this channel, but no one's paying me to say this. I just think that's good. I think that's just a really good thing. VTubers don't want to pay money every month to be able to use their motion capture data. The existing Mocap bundle is a half body system, and it runs for around $2,000 USD. That's a lot of money for half a suit. In fairness, it also includes gloves from StretchSense. StretchSense makes great gloves that people use in the animation and game and film industry. It's all stuff I'm excited about, and even if you're just glancing at the brand name, it's a pretty good price for the hardware of this pedigree. So I should say, before you sneeze at the 2K, just know this is all coming from a place of excellence from some other companies that have a little bit to do with why this stuff is so good. However, all the high fidelity mocap data in the world doesn't matter if it gets locked behind software that you're not interested in using. So who is this for? This seems particularly well placed for someone who wants to do high-end VTubing and has a big budget but very little tech skill. It also seems like an option for people who are new or willing to revamp totally. The adoption process is going to be painful if you have things the way you like it in OBS already. Obskur has a lot of neat features though. One of the things the team is really proud of is Obskur's ability to do everything in one program, and I gotta say that is great. Most VTubers looking to stream use a lot of different pieces of software. Maybe they use VCFace with a throwing stuff plugin going into OBS. Every VTuber I know somehow has a totally or at least a slightly different setup, and probably 2 to 5 programs running on their computer at the same time. And Obskur positions itself as an app that will tackle all of these separate needs at once. If they don't have something that a VTuber would want, I'm pretty sure it's on their roadmap too, just from talking to the team. They have been shipping a lot of updates since launch. So if this mocap suit only works with this program, and this program is trying to replace OBS, then it has to do a pretty darn good job of replacing OBS. And that's where things get tricky. I've had some crashes and issues with Obskur. Observed a good amount of jank in this thing. One of the first things I did was duplicate a cube in Obskur and crashed the entire program somehow. I didn't test all the features, but that's not really the point of this review. I'm supposed to be here talking about the mocap. I had a weird amount of basic stuff not work for me, and I think a lot of that stuff is improving. In fact, there was a request I made about something that wasn't working well for me that actually already got addressed and got added in the process of me just reviewing this. But keep in mind, $2,000 is a lot to spend. I literally bought a new laptop recently, and I didn't spend much more than that, and it had a 40 series card and, all the things that I would want in a proper PC. Also, I'm just going to talk about this because it's cool. Recently, they debuted a character creator, which looks really dynamic and interesting. A lot of the look of this is thanks to ArtGun, who's their art director, and they're a total genius. I'm curious to see how far this goes. Currently, the characters are limited to female humanoids, but they have a very distinct look, and it looks great. Obskur is also set up with its own asset store. If you want a special virtual set or 3D background, currently your only option is to buy something with Obskur's virtual currency. They have some free models as well, but there's no way to simply just bring in a 3D model like an FBX file or an OBJ. You can bring your character model in as a VRM, but you can't bring in simple unrigged static models. This is kind of rough because that's the point of getting set up with a software that is designed to display an entire digital world. If you can't add in custom branded assets, how much value are you going to be able to get out of this system? I built a custom Unreal solution for a VTuber named Pumpkin Potion, and she commissioned Velpepper to model basically an entire room for her. And no one else has these unique assets except her, and it just really made her stuff pop. And after a while, when Unreal Engine wasn't the thing that she wanted to use quite as much, she was able to use the renders for totally different stuff. I'm hoping Obskur makes more room for this kind of customization in the future. Now, not only are you locked into buying 3D models through Obskur, you are also locked into sharing your revenue with them. Obskur takes a 20% cut of all of the bits generated through their Twitch extension, which isn't great. Twitch, last year, in a big upheaval, started taking 50% of everyone's paid subscriptions. I guess Obskur taking 20% isn't outrageous, but Twitch is already taking 50% of your subs. They're only taking bits generated through their widget, but to my knowledge, it's the only way to be able to do interactions in Obskur. You could set your interactions down to 0, but doing cool in-stream effects is kind of how streamers monetize things. And it's hard to tell people that they should buy a motion capture suit that forces them to have a split with a company, especially when there's free stuff available like Venian, And to be honest, I don't think Obskur at this point in time is taking such great advantage of Unreal Engine's rendering that it looks remarkably better than some of the best stuff I've seen out of Venian and other programs. All right, so here's what you get when you open the box. Box opens up to 2 more boxes, which contain the gloves and the sensors respectively. Underneath is all the straps and stuff. Here you can see the gloves. They're made really nicely. You can see the big Stretch Sense logo on them. I felt like they fit pretty well and I like them. Here you can find your 9 sensors. This is a great amount of sensors. This gets data on a lot of things: pelvis, chest, upper arm, lower arm, and of course your head and your hands. I found out later from the team that Obskur kind of expects you to keep the box, and that's what you store the sensors for the suit in and charge them. And I didn't really like this. I threw the box away. It's a really big box. They also have the machine washable bag that you can use with the gloves. All the cables and receivers you need are also in the box. They're just underneath some of the sensors and foam. And this thing is great. Like, I don't have anything bad to say about the mocap. I tested the suit, I tried it with my own model, but Obskur crashed actually when I tried to bring it in. This is probably on me because I don't do a whole lot with VRMs. So for testing purposes, I mainly used their default avatar and my friend Minerva's model. She has a really, really cool VRM with a whole bunch of physics parameters and stuff, which made it an amazing model to use to check out. Check her out at PartyDemoness. One notable issue with this thing is it takes a little bit of time to calibrate, so it's important to read instructions carefully when you first use it. The total calibration time is over a minute, which is annoying, and that's just the suit. The hands are a separate calibration process, and you have to do them individually. If you're like me and you wear big studio headphones, be sure to take those off when the suit calibrates. The way the suit calibrates is by getting a magnetic baseline, and I accidentally threw that off during my testing a few times. It can take a few tries to get things right. While I was getting set up, I accidentally unplugged my gloves a few times. This is because I bumped the transmitters on top of the gloves from the pins, and normally I would say this is just me being a klutz, but this seemed just a little too easy to do. I think it actually happened twice where my gloves kicked out. In terms of the parts themselves, they feel really solid. Didn't seem like anything was extremely breakable. Maybe not quite Lego brick status, but pretty solid hardware. The ergonomics are pretty good. I thought the straps were really comfy. I personally have sensory issues, and other systems I've owned have really driven me crazy. These felt really nice, and the weight was totally fine. This is definitely an upgrade in comfort from my DIY Vive Tracker system. I also had some troubles getting my firmware to load onto the gloves with my initial setup, and this thankfully just turned out to be me. Fofamit, who's one of my friends from the team, was able to help me out, and we were able to figure out it was just an issue with my PC. After I got through all the weird stuff, it was incredibly smooth, and I can't remember a time where I felt like I needed to recalibrate these things. I was just kind of off to the races. This is really good because almost every on-body tracking system that you use is going to require pretty frequent stops to recalibrate the motion capture, or it's going to require anchoring devices or sensors somewhere in the room. This is the part where if I was a better reviewer, I would talk about how I wore it all day and it never changed or something. I felt like this was really good here. I didn't really want to push my luck. This is a big dub for Obskur. This is a big problem in suit-based mocap for VTubing. It's just a huge problem. I'm sure if I wore them long enough, there may come a time where I needed to recalibrate, and that might take up another minute or two of stream. But this really didn't happen at any point during my testing once I got working. To be fair, I don't stream for 6 hours a day. I don't know what happens if you run the whole system that long. The site says that the batteries work for up to 12 hours. Products rarely meet the battery life, but I'm not really concerned for streamers that run long stream times. Like, this should be fine. If for some reason you are suddenly unable to use your Obskur suit, Obskur also takes VMC protocol and has native Leap Motion integration that you can use now, which is the same stuff I use now for hand tracking, and it looks pretty good. So even if you got to a point where you really didn't want to wear the suit anymore, there are other options for you there. The characters panel has a ton of adjustments that help me at every stage. I noticed the model looking weird, and I would find a slider that was able to do exactly what I wanted it to do really easily. Props to the team. That panel works really well. Getting your model set up with this suit or with whatever hardware you have was pretty nice. I noticed there was a small offset when I turned my wrist, and this was kind of true no matter what model I used. There was a slight wrist rotation that ended up being parented a little too far out on the models, and I tried this on with the Obskur Mocap suit. This is something they should probably fix. But but it's really not too bad, and during the course of normal streaming, I'm not sure anyone would really notice. The fingers also look really good. The stretch lens gloves worked great. I will say there seemed to be like just a little bit of bone orientation issues with the models I was working. I noticed just a little bit of strange offsetting with the thumbs, but there were almost certainly an issue with rigging and just a different kind of hand pose than what the suit was expecting. When I moved my fingers, they moved on the character in predictable ways. The gloves are machine washable. I didn't put that to the test, but VTubers aren't really known for hygiene. I know y'all are gross and you're not gonna wash these things at all, you dirty rascals, but hey, if it's there, it's there. That's great. Ultimately, fingers are one of the trickiest things to do with real-time animation, so I don't wanna sound too harsh. I'm just being a little bit unfiltered here. I wouldn't say the gloves are flawless, but they looked really nice. More than natural enough for a VTuber stream. In fact, probably more natural than what you'd see from even high-end VTuber streams. Most of the big VTubers don't have fidelity this good in their hand tracking yet, and I gotta say I was pretty impressed. Closing thoughts. So what is this thing? It's an incredibly powerful half-body system. If I could ask for anything from the team, it's that they just focus on shoring up the basics and opening up the system. A lot of their features seem passable as an OBS substitute, but the program feels like it needs to mature a bit. This needs to be able to play nice with other software in order to be a real tool for the VTubing community. This is too much money to spend on something that is completely tied to one program. I am happy to have the suit. It's really cool that they gave me one of these. There is cool stuff on the way from what I've been told. Heck, I might even stream out of Obskur one day, though it might be a while. But some of the things that I do want that they're coming up with, I'm not really allowed to talk about yet. This is kind of a weird position to be in because I don't really have that much to say that is unflattering towards this suit. But it's really weird that you can't use the suit with anything other than Obskur. It totally ties this down. And it's what I think makes the investment of the suit not a good idea for most people. It's worth noting that you don't have to buy the suit to use Obskur. You can use anything you can get in through VMC protocol or the native Leap Motion stuff, and you can get head rotation straight out of your iPhone sensor. This project is really new. It's a public release less than a year old. I'm really hoping a lot of the stuff that I have issues with now gets fixed, because I think if they do, this is an awesome addition to the VTuber community, and I think people definitely need to interact with this thing and see the work this talented team is doing. But I need to know that this is not just a machine designed for microtransactions and locked in hardware. A final pro-con, Mocap is fantastic, has great battery life that doesn't need calibrating very often, excellent finger tracking. Obskur does seem to offer a one-stop solution for streaming, and it has integration for other mocap as well. The cons, you cannot use this suit in other programs. There is no data recording. The suit does take a little while to get on when you get started, and the risks are currently just a little bit off on the models.